We as the church, we can help make abortion unthinkable, and that's with love. But they have to know that we're a safe place to go to.
Welcome back to Straight Talk on Life Issues. I'm Victor Nieves, as always, joined by Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
You know, Victor, an unexpected pregnancy can be downright frightening. Fear creeps in, and many women feel pressured to make a quick decision, and that quick decision is usually abortion.
That's right, and especially true for first-time mothers. They can have the thought of a human growing inside of them, but they also have the what-ifs, the questions that fill their head, potentially with dread and fear.
And if that's your situation as you listen to this podcast, we want you to know you're not alone. There are communities and organizations providing support through local churches for both pregnant single women or young women with families.
That's right, and motherhood is a gift that'll change you, but it'll change you for the better. Today, we're going to speak about this with Amy Ford, the founder and president of Embrace Grace, a nonprofit that equips churches to love and encourage women with unexpected pregnancies by providing spiritual, emotional, and practical support. We're also joined by Shanese Brown. She's a devoted single mother with a powerful testimony of God's faithfulness. After going through an Embrace Grace group back in 2016, her life was transformed as she saw God work in miraculous ways in her life and in the life of her son. Shanese and Amy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Briefly tell us your stories, and Amy, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, I had an unplanned pregnancy when I was 19. I grew up in church, had an amazing family, but I just didn't really have a relationship with the Lord. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I was so scared. Fear just like overwhelmed all my thoughts. I thought my life was over, my dreams were over. And then I ended up scheduling the abortion, paying for the abortion. And when I went in to have it done and they were explaining to me how they were going to do it, I actually ended up hyperventilating and passing out in the abortion room. And when I came to, one of the nurses was feeding me. She was trying to give me a drink of water. And she said, "You're too emotionally distraught to make this decision today. You can come back another day, but today you're not getting an abortion." And so I went back out in the waiting room where the father of the baby was, and we just kind of looked at each other like, okay, like if we're going to be homeless and if we're all, all these worst case scenarios that we thought our life would look like, we knew we had each other and we were high school sweethearts. We said we wanted to get married someday. We decided to get married when I was 16 weeks pregnant. And we had asked the pastor that had led my husband to the Lord years before if he would marry us. And he said, "No, I'm sorry. Because you sinned, I will not bless this marriage." And we were like, wow, we are such horrible people. Like, we can't even be married and be blessed. And so then we tried to go back to church, and it was like the elephant in the room, and people don't know whether to say congratulations or I'm sorry. So they don't say anything, and then you just feel alone in a crowd of people. And so we stopped going for a really long time. We ended up having a son, and he is amazing. He's 26 now. He went to Oral Roberts University, got his MBA. He majored in theology, and he is married and to a labor and delivery nurse. And now they just had a baby. So I'm a honey. That's my grandma name. I am so excited. Looking back, I can't imagine my life without him. He's just what we needed. Even though he was unplanned by me, he was planned by God, and God knew exactly what we needed, who we needed in our life. And me and my husband, we've been married 27 years and have 4 kids. And we're just so thankful. And one additional part to the story is the pastor that wouldn't marry us. Whenever my son was 2, he actually called my husband out of the blue and he asked for forgiveness. He said he felt like it was his worst mistake in pastoring history that he had ever made. And my husband was just like, he loves this pastor. He was like, "Yes, I forgive you. We've missed you," all that. And when my son was 16, that pastor asked me to come speak at his church about Embrace Grace, the ministry I started. And he was very open with his congregation before I had gotten there. So I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's now in Austin area. So he was very open. He said, "This is what I did years ago. I had a religious spirit. I had a Pharisee heart." And so I came, I spoke, and I did my thing. And then afterwards, he asked me and my son to come on the platform. And he said, and this is in front of the entire congregation. He said, Amy, years ago, I asked your husband for forgiveness, but I never really asked you. Will you forgive me? I was like, yes, of course. We forgave you a long time ago. We love you so much. Well, then he looked at my son, 16, in front of the whole church, and he said, will you forgive me for planting seeds of rejection in your heart before you were ever even born? And while you were
Mm,
in your mother's womb, I rejected you. Will you forgive me? And my son, in front of the entire congregation, says, I forgive you. And it was such a powerful moment in that room. Like you could feel church wounds being lifted. The fact that the pastor would humble himself in that way was just
yes.
super amazing and super healing, even for Jess, my son, because we told him a couple years before he hadn't done the math about our anniversary and his birthday, and so he we had to tell him a couple years before that. So I think it was even healing for him. So going through all of that just helped me realize the power that the church has. Like I did go to church every week. Why did I not feel like the church was a safe place to go to in that situation for prayer, wisdom, guidance, counsel, support? Instead it was the last place I went to. And no, my church never told me what a pregnancy center was. An amazing pro-life organizations that are in the movement. I had no idea. And back then, we didn't have Google, so we just had the phone book and we went straight to the abortion clinic. And how many other women in our
Mm.
churches, when the abortion rate is the same inside the church as it is outside, are going to have abortions because they don't feel the church is a safe place to go to. They don't know about the resources that are available, which is why we started Embrace Grace to change that.
Amy, if people understood the amazing power and healing effect of an apology,
Yeah, for
Mhm.
there
sure.
would be so much more of that. And as you said, people's view of that pastor changed with so many members, I'm sure.
Totally.
Shanice, let's hear your story.
So I grew up knowing who God was at the age of 14. I moved out here in Texas, took a step of faith. And while I was out here, I was in a season of like finding myself, in a season of really pursuing God. But I got in that part of God where it's like, tired of waiting on Him, just like allowing the enemy to kind of like speak to your heart. And just basically, I was living a life of just sin. I was just doing anything. And so I just remember being at a college party and like I wasn't feeling well. And I ended up going to the hospital that night. And I remember the doctor telling me, like, oh, you don't feel good because you're pregnant. And I was like, pregnant? I was devastated. He was saying it so friendly as if like, I had a husband and we've been waiting or something, but I'm like not in that situation. So when I heard that, that was very scary. I just remember crying so much. I honestly feel like everything after that was a blur at the hospital. And I just remember sitting in the car outside the hospital and just trying to figure out what in the world am I going to do? Like every scenario that's coming to my mind is like negative. I'm like, I'm literally like, I don't know what to do. And so the only thing that I could think of was having an abortion because I was scared. And on top of that, because I was really out here in these streets, I literally didn't even know who my baby's daddy would have been. And it's just like a lot of shame and a lot of like, I'm like, what's going on? Like to tell somebody like, oh, you don't know who your baby's daddy is. Like it's such an embarrassing feeling and a lot of shame that comes with that. And so I didn't want to even have to deal with that as well on top of that. And I just remember like being on my phone looking for different abortion clinics and just looking at the price of it and stuff. And I always tell people that's the one time in my life that I was just so grateful not to have enough money. And just like in my fear and in my like worry, I just remember the Holy Spirit spoke to me so clearly and stopped me in my tracks and was like, if you trust me with this, like I will take care of you. And I remember like all of the fear and everything just like flooding away. And so I ended
Wow.
up finding a Christian like clinic down the street. I believe it's called Pregnancy Help for You. And that was like the first place I had went to. And they were so nice. Like I wasn't expecting that because I didn't know what to expect. They gave me like a Bible, they prayed for me. And I'm just like, okay, like it gave me a little bit of an ease. And so that was like the first people that I had told. And I just remember like the job that I was working at the time, one of the ladies was telling me about Embrace Grace. I had never heard of Embrace Grace before. And she was like, yeah, it's for moms that are single and pregnant. And I'm thinking, like, really? They have a group for like moms that are single and pregnant at the church? Like, me coming from church and being over ministry, I just felt like I can't even imagine something like that. And I already felt so ashamed because like I know better. Like you like no, this is not the will of God. Like God has called you not to settle. But still I found myself pregnant and not knowing who the my child's father was. So that was a lot for me to have to mentally get through my head. And so I remember my mom had also brought up Embrace Grace because I eventually told her, which that was scary. She didn't kill me. Obviously, I'm still alive. But I just
There
remember like
might be a
telling
few
her,
scars though, huh?
Yeah.
yes. And she actually, surprisingly enough, mine said it all. I was getting all the things. And so, anyway, she told me about Embrace Grace. And I was like, that's the second person that told me. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll try it. And so, like, this church that was down the street from me started going there. And I just remember, like, other leaders being there and just hearing their testimonies. And, like, some of their testimonies were so raw. And I don't think I've ever been around church people that were, like, so transparent. Like, one of the leaders was saying, like, she used to, like, strip. And another leader was talking about, like, how she had an abortion in the past. It was just, like, a lot of transparency. So, like, a little bit of that shame was starting to, like, lift off of me and just
Mm.
being surrounded by leaders and then other moms as well. That is like, it was such a support system. I always tell people, like, when God had me that day in the car crying and he said, if you trust me, I'll take care of you. He literally meant that thing and he had embraced grace in mind. I didn't know he had embraced grace in mind, but literally it's changed my life, like still to this day. Like my son, he'll be 9 next month, but like I was part of the group and I just stayed connected. And it was such a blessing because they gave us a baby shower. And I just remember being so overwhelmed with God's love. And these were like brand new gifts, like everything I needed. It was so beautiful. And these were like strangers that adopted us. And so I just remember being so overwhelmed with just God's love, like gradually as I kept coming. Because, like, honestly, I still was trying to figure things out like the first couple of times I was there and like, is this real? Like, is this just like a front? Like, do they really care? Are they really, they really cheerleaded me on as a mom. And so I really felt encouraged, like, I can do this. And I was grateful. And just even after that, kind of transitioning to like the next segment where it's like embrace life and just kind of walking alongside me and the other moms, like after we've had our babies and just continue to give us encouragement and just speak life into us and our identity and who God has called us to be so that we can be all God has called us to be and so that like we can pour into our children as well. And so yeah, I don't know honestly where I would be without Embrace Grace. I thank God. And in a way, my son basically saved my life because eventually I found out who the child's father was, but like I was living a life of sin that I knew better of. But like because of my son, it's like I didn't want to keep living like that. And so it really caused me to not settle. Now my standards are so high and I do not play that. You know what I mean? Like, because I just want what God has for me and the best that He has for me. Because it's not just about me, it's also about my child. And so I just thank God for His timing and how He kind of orchestrated it in the way that He did. So.
Yeah, the child who they told you would be a curse and destroy
Mhm.
your life is responsible for where you are today. As you both described things with church, it's amazing how far a little love will go, isn't it?
Mm.
Totally. We say love saves lives.
Yeah. And the people that shower gifts and showed you support, maybe shared their wisdom, these were really small acts of kindness for them, but it made the world a difference to you, didn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll never forget it.
So we still go to the same church. Embrace Grace is in over 1,200 churches, but I still lead a group at that church. And we just had the baby shower last Thursday, and Shanice shared her story. She adopted a mom to give back to her. So I love that the Embrace Grace moms are still involved 9 years later. Now she's going to that church, she's raising her kid in the church, and she's giving back where she was sewed into.
Shanice and Amy, what expectations did you have about being a mother? Things like how a mom should act, what they need to do, and how did that impact you?
Whenever you're first finding out you're pregnant, you kind of go into crisis mode, and it's really hard for you to see what tomorrow looks like. You're just thinking the worst case scenarios of like you were saying your mom's going to kill you. I thought literally my mom was going to kick me out of the house and I was going to be homeless. And so I couldn't even see at first past that, that this is it, my life is over. And then once we'd made that life decision, that was like, we walked out of the abortion clinic and we're like, okay, this is what our life is going to look like now. Then you kind of start to think, okay, what does this look like? And it's scary. I was the oldest of 4 kids, so I've babysat kids. I was a nanny, so I knew logistically what it could look like, but I wasn't in college. It was right after high school. My husband had to slow way down in his hours or he said he did the 7-year plan. It took him 7 years to graduate because he had to work at TGI Fridays and work as, installing little satellite dishes into people's houses for DirecTV. We were making it work, and God always made a way. When you're in that situation, you put pen to paper, you're like, this actually doesn't math. The math doesn't math. We're not going to be able to afford an apartment. Like, we're not going to be able to do it, but God just does it. And it was like, we needed to be obedient and like choose life. But then every step of the way, he met us there. And it was a lot of faith, a lot of prayers, and he did it.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. That question is kind of crazy because I'm like, I don't know what to expect as a mom. I feel
Right.
like every mom is like, they don't really know like what that even entails because every kid is different. And I just remember I just was in fight or flight survival mode. My whole pregnancy, I didn't know who my child's father was. So it was a lot of by myself, obviously, besides being an Embrace Grace and stuff, but just like realistically, like I was still working. And I think my mind was so bombarded with like not knowing who the child's father was and just worrying about that and trying not to worry about that, that I don't even know if I even had a thought like that. But I will say that just going to the classes at Embrace Grace, it encouraged me. It made me feel like I could do it. So it gave me hope, at least just try one more day, try one more week, just to keep showing up. And with me showing up, God just showed out. And I just remember, like, at the time, I had an apartment. I ended up losing one of my jobs at the time as well. And finding out my son was high risk. Like, it was so much that was involved in my pregnancy. And I just remember God providing over and abundantly. I ended up finding another job pretty quickly. And in that, I remember my church like helped pay for my car payment. I remember like having an apartment where I only had just a bed, and I ended up, getting like a couch donated to me, tables and dining chairs donated to me that I actually still have to this day. And so I really didn't know what to expect as a mom besides showing up and keep on like moving forward. And with doing that, God just was kind of like holding my hand and just helping me to continue to, keep my head up and trust in him.
So, as of this moment in your life, Shanese, how is motherhood treating you?
Ooh, motherhood got its ups and it's got its downs. I'm super blessed to have my son.
She's raising a world changer
I
for sure,
am.
a leader.
Listen, raising a world changer is not for the faint of heart. So my son is actually on the spectrum. He has like a little bit of a disability. He has ADHD. And so me as a mom, it does have its challenges because I am still a single mom. And so I have been able to see him be a part of things that is like, wow. Like he's been able to do like some interviews with Embrace Grace a few times and share his heart about like what he sees God looking like for him and hearing his God stories and just watching him watch me and see like how my relationship is with God. And sometimes I'm thinking like, is he even listening? Like I repeat myself 1,000 times and then he'll just show up and do random stuff. Like I remember one time he literally took some invitations for church and started passing it out to his bus driver and the bus driver assistant and the kids on the bus. So he like does these things. So like for any mom, parenting has its challenges. But like for me, I really can tell that he is so special. And the enemy knew that and wanted to take him out. And everybody has a call and a purpose in their life. And just watching him just like slowly become into his person who God has called him to be has definitely been challenging, but it's also been such an experience for me because as a mom, I don't think people realize like so much trauma that you dealt with in your childhood. And it's like I'm learning how to deal with things that I've gone through in my life because I have a child. And so it's teaching me how to like look inside of myself so that the things I've gone through, I don't pass to him.
Yeah, changing legacy.
Yeah, and it's just like breaking generational curses. Like God has told me, like I'm a chain breaker, and so like being able to like stop things right here. Like I don't want him to grow up and end up, getting someone pregnant and she's a single mom. Like all of these type of things that I've gone through, like I wanted to stop right where I'm at, and so it's just been amazing. It's challenging, but it's been amazing to be able to like join God in that and trying to help steward the gifts on the inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, what about you?
Oh man, well, I have 4 kids and they're all so, so unique, but I love that God created them so differently. And I wish there was a cookie cutter way of like, here's how you raise a kid. And we did it, you do this and then you do that. And then you have this like successful child that's launched out into the world, but they're so unique. And we have to rely on the Lord to lean into how do I steward this life, that you created. So I need your help because you made this one. And so how do I do it? And so I love seeing all of the gifts inside of them. I always say that, and Shanice kind of said it too, but like that sometimes when God wants to woo his son or his daughter back to his heart, he might just give him a baby to do it. And he might just give them the sweetest face that they've ever laid eyes on so that maybe they can get a tiny glimpse of how much God must love us. And I think for each one of my kids, I feel closer and closer to the Lord. Like they're just such miracles. And I'm so thankful that He chose me out of all the women in the world to steward these 4 lives that are just so amazing. And now being a grandma, it's a whole nother set of feelings. It's awesome.
Shanice, what about you? What's your favorite part of being a mother?
My favorite part of being a mom is watching him thrive in the things that he's good at. Because I love when it's time for football and he goes out to the football field
He's
and
really
he's
good.
just running. Like for me, I just love like being in that football mom era, getting him ready and we'll go outside and like practice in the field and I'll throw the ball at him and he doesn't like the way I throw it and all that stuff. And so being able to like the things that he enjoys to be a part of that and then watch him do it because he is pretty good. I mean, I don't know how far he's going to go, but he is pretty good. And I love to take him to his games and watch him just have a good time and just be a part of like just watching him grow up. So I love, like I said, just taking him to his sporting events. That's just been so much fun. I feel like that's like my favorite part.
I'm guessing that later in life, your son is going to remember those times of throwing the ball back and forth. How can our listeners be more supportive of women facing an unexpected pregnancy? Amy?
Well, one way is definitely by starting an Embrace Grace group at your church, ensuring that your church is a safe place for women with unexpected pregnancies in their community to go to. I spoke at an event not too long ago, and it was a lot of women ministry leaders. It was 300, and it was for a specific denomination. And so I said, raise your hand if you feel like your church is a safe place for women in your community that have an unplanned pregnancy to go to. And it looked like almost everyone raised their hand. And then I said, well, raise your hand if the women in your community know that they just know, oh, I'm pregnant. Let me go to this church and get some support. And not one raise their hand.
Mhm.
And I think that's the situation with a lot of us. Like we all, for the most part, we want to help. We want, and as believers, we want to walk alongside, but without a bridge to get them there, it's going to get them into the church. It's tough. And it's unfortunately because of us, like as believers, like the church isn't the first place a girl in that situation thinks to go to. It's the last place because of shame and guilt. And so having an Embrace Grace support group allows them to know, like, oh, this is a safe place for me to go to. And it's 12 weeks, it's digital curriculum. So you just press play and all of the teachings are done for you. The pregnancy centers in your area refer their clients to the local churches to go through the support group system. So I feel like that is a great first place to start. And then once you're leading a group or involved in a group, whether you're buying baby shower gifts or whatever, you really get to have a relationship with the mom and you start to realize the things that you need. Just like with Shanice, she was like, I needed a couch. I needed a kitchen table. I needed my car paid off. We are the church as people. When we walk alongside these moms, these opportunities to sow in and help them or to pray together and ask the Lord to do it. And He always does. And so we as the church, we can help make abortion unthinkable. And that's with love. But they have to know that we're a safe place to go to.
Shanice, what do you think? How can our listeners be more supportive of women facing unexpected pregnancies?
I definitely think for sure Embrace Grace is a good start because it has all the tools that you need. You know, like if you feel like you don't know where to start, but just like on a more tangible level, I would say just simply showing God's love, being his hands and feet. There's no reason in the world that anybody should feel like they can't come to church because of their sin or because of them falling short when that's not even the heart of God. And I just feel like a lot of times as believers or as people, we forget to do the basic things like love when God has called us to love. And in that love, we may not even know what that looks like or whatever, but if we would just like, if people could just see how they can help and just
Lean in instead of run away. Or
exactly.
like, I don't know what to say, so I'm
Yeah,
just gonna not say anything.
exactly. Just showing up and showing love and seeing like how can I help, but in a way that is not like super, I guess, religious-y. Because I know a lot of times that's a huge reason why people don't want to even come to church or whatever, or especially if they're pregnant. And so I feel like if people could just like lean into love and what that looks like and see how can I help? Like if there is there anything that you need, and making the woman not feel shameful because God wouldn't make her feel shameful. He has open arms. So actually being like Jesus is the key. A lot of times we talk about, oh, we love God, we love church, but we forget how to be like Christ. And so I feel like if we can possess those characteristics of love, that the people would just come and like we would be able to help them in their need because we took shame out of it, we took our opinions out of it, we took our politics out of it, and we just simply love and allowed God to show up and meet us where we were because we don't know what that looks like all the time and what that looks like, but just submitting to God and just showing love, I feel like he will help guide us with what each individual woman is needing. Whether that's like an encouraging word, whether that's taking her to lunch, whether that's praying for her, whether that's getting a cute little onesie or whatever that looks like, but just showing up and putting all of the other things aside and just stepping in and see how you can be a help for that woman.
Amy, can you share with us some stories of young single moms who have had these unexpected pregnancies but chose life for their children? Maybe some of your favorite stories.
One of my favorites I share a lot is a girl that was into witchcraft. She was Wiccan and she had heard about Embrace Grace. And so she called me and she said, my friend told me about this. You have a baby shower. I really need the free stuff, but I'm into witchcraft. Like, is that going to be a problem? And I'm like, no, it's fine. Just come, just come. And so she didn't have a car. So I'd pick her up every week and take her home. She was actually was really smart. And her parents, when she was super young, had given her all the books of religion and said, you know, you choose what you want to believe. And there was something about nature and trees, and it was false stuff, but it was something she felt connected to in that moment. So she ended up going through Embrace Grace and she never missed a class. Like not once, she came every single time. And I remember one time she said, I like the way it makes me feel when I come to this church. And so I was just really was holding on to and believing and in prayer that there was going to be a salvation experience. Like I just knew it. I was super excited about it. And I was thanking God for it, you know, before it even happened. I just knew it was going to happen. Well, she does the whole 12 weeks. She does the baby shower. She has the Princess Day, which is something about their identity and their value and their where she does the whole thing. And she never did surrender her life to the Lord. And she didn't know that I took it personal. You know, I was just, of course, I loved her no matter what, but I was just talking to God about like, you know, what happened here? Like by week 7, they surely should have, you know. But I heard the Lord say, you're planting seeds. Do you think a girl that is Wiccan would have ever stepped foot in a church if you hadn't created a safe place for her to be there? And so let my people keep watering the seeds. And so I lost track with her for a while. Her phone number changed. And one day, it was a year later, I got a call on Facebook, which I didn't even know you could call people on Facebook. Like my computer was ringing and I'm like, hello. And she said, hey, it's me. I know it's been a while. I'm so sorry. I lost my phone, all this stuff. She said, I needed to tell you something. And she's now the manager of a restaurant slash gas station. She's got a little baby. And she said, I've been thinking lately that maybe God is real because I like think something and then something will happen. And it's been pretty consistent. And so one day she's going in to work her shift and she said, God, if you're real and you can hear me right now, like I don't want to just think you're real. I want to know you're real. So can you do something a little bigger? Because I just want to know that you're real and that you're really trying to talk to me right now. So she goes into work her shift and she told me that a guy walked in. And I remember she specifically said he seemed very nervous. And he walked in and he came to the counter and he said, "Hi, I was driving past this gas station restaurant and I heard the Lord say to turn my car around and to tell the girl at the counter that he sees you and he loves you and all he wants is your heart." She was like, "What?" And she went straight home and she got her Embrace Grace curriculum from a year before. And there's one part where it has a salvation prayer in it. And she said that she even got the crown that she had from her old Princess Day. And she said, "I went in the bathroom, put the crown on my head, and looked in the mirror," because she said, "I wanted it to be a moment that I never doubted. Like, did you actually, like, I wanted it seared in my memory, like, this is the moment that I'm choosing God and I'm choosing to live for Him." And so I was the first person she called. And again, she had no idea. Like, this one I did take personally, and I'm so thankful that the Lord let me see her, because some girls do walk out and I'm like, does anything, I hope something stuck, I don't know. But He let me see that one. But I was like, jumping for joy, so excited. And after the phone, I was just thanking God. But He reminded me of, she liked the way we made her feel, because it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance, and it's His goodness that draws us to His side. That's what changes people. She liked the way we made her feel. And then I was thinking about how that guy that went up to the counter, like, she said he was nervous and he probably walked away thinking, "God, I'm such a dork. Like, why do you make me do these awkward things? It's so random, whatever." And he had no idea that she went straight home and surrendered her life to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I can just imagine someday in heaven, Jesus is like, "Remember that girl that I told you to go talk to? Well, there she is, and there's her kids and her grandkids and her great grandkids." And it wasn't because of one person. It wasn't just him. It was all of God's people being obedient to love and sow into her, whether it was buying a baby shower gift, whether it was her experience at the pregnancy center, or him going to the counter, or her leaders in Embrace Grace, or the love she felt at the church, whatever it might be. It was all of us being obedient until she finally made that decision. And so, with some of the moms, I'm like, I know we're planting seeds. And even this semester, I just finished a semester last week. I had a harder semester. We have 5 moms. One mom is 31, I think, and she's doing amazing. The Lord's doing a big work. And the other 4 are between 17 and 19. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is connecting, I don't know. Well, we just had the baby shower on Thursday, and one of them that I've been just like, I don't know, I hope so. She sent me the sweetest and longest text of like, "This has changed my life. I feel so close to the Lord. We are a family now." And it was one that I didn't know. There was no response, really. I did not know. And her mom wants to start going to the church now. And so, we're planting seeds. Sometimes we are like, oh, we want this big transformation to happen. Of course, we always want that. But sometimes it just takes longer. You plant seeds and then you let the Lord keep doing His work, and then they have to make decisions, and things like that. But it's just awesome. I say with Embrace Grace, we have front row seats to miracles. The beauty in just loving people is pretty awesome.
Wow. Amy, those are incredible, incredible stories. Talk about an act of faith, not only by yourself, but the man who turned around to go to that gas station.
Right.
What a work of the Lord. What would you both say to a woman who's contemplating an abortion? Amy?
Well, I would say that you can have your baby in your dreams too. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And to get connected to community, to surround yourself with people that speak life into you, that you're going to do this, you're going to be a great mom, and you're not alone, and that we're here with you. Check out Embrace Grace for sure.
Shanice, what would you say to a woman who's thinking about an abortion?
Ooh, I would tell her, breathe, girl, breathe. I know how you feel right now. I know you're overwhelmed. I know you're sad. I know you're scared. I know you're frustrated. God's going to take care of you. You ain't got to have to worry about nothing. It's going to be challenging, but God's got you. And I definitely always encourage moms when I found out they're pregnant and kind of in that situation to check out Embrace Grace. Go online, put in your zip code, and see which one is closest to you. And then let God take over from there, because you don't know what to expect. You have no idea what this looks like, but just taking that step of faith, like the feeling that you feel right now and the overwhelmingness, God is going to slowly start to help you realize that you got this and I got you.
You know, when both of you found out you were unexpectedly pregnant, you probably assumed or thought at that moment that your world was coming to an end. But look at you now, just in your stories. I'm just hearing your examples, Amy. I was doing all I could not to be verbal and cheering about that. And as you talked about the young girl who was so quiet, it reminded me in the Old Testament that God was in a still, small voice,
Mhm.
not in the rocks, not in the wind. And that's how he comes. And we
Hmm.
have to be so careful to hear those still small voices. I'd like to ask you both your opinion. Do you think that a message of abstinence in the church would be helpful to women, especially, you've gone through it. If you had been hearing that, of course, you hear about the sin of abortion, but is there a message to follow God's commandment regarding sex outside of marriage? Does that play a piece at all in what you've observed?
For sure. I know like the girls that are raised inside the church, when my generation, when they were younger, they had purity rings.
Mm,
And, you'd put your purity ring and you'd make a commitment to stay abstinent until marriage. But the issue I see with the purity rings is they'll come into Embrace Grace and they have taken it off and they've shoved it into the back corner of their jewelry box. And they said, they have lost their purity when that's actually not biblical. Like we've been washed white as snow. Now you've lost your virginity and there are natural consequences, spiritual like things happen when you do that. There's soul ties that are formed. Like God does not want, there's a reason why he wants us to stay abstinent until marriage, but you can't lose your purity. If you've been washed white as snow, like you can start again. So like when my daughter wanted a purity ring, I was like, listen, let's call it a pure heart ring. And I'm so proud of you for wanting to stay abstinent. And I'm cheering you on in this. I believe you can do it. But if you do mess up, don't take this off because you have not lost your purity. And because what the mindset of that is the girls that do think they lose their purity, then they just start settling for these guys that are treating them horribly. And they're like, well,
Absolutely.
I'm dirty now. So
Yeah.
I'll just, what I don't can't get any better. I'm now dirty and I've lost my purity. So yes, the answer to your question is absolutely. It is very important to be talking about abstinence, but doing it in a way of a pure heart that it's something you can lose your virginity, but again, there's natural consequences. And that's what we like to talk about. What are those consequences that happen when our souls are intertwined with someone that is not our husband? And, right now, this generation is really focused on mental health and emotional health, which is amazing. And to talk even about that, like there are emotional and mental health consequences with having sex outside of marriage and how we can protect our hearts by waiting for our future husband and creating, some boundaries of like, because when you're in a relationship, of course you want to have sex. Your body is going to respond when you're in love and you want to, but setting those frameworks beforehand of like, we won't be, in the same room alone without another, a parent in the other room or whatever, you can, whatever that life situation is, but you can't create those and have conversations beforehand of like, this is our commitment to each other and we're not going to go past these things because we want to give our whole heart and soul to our future husband when they get married someday.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's a little bit different because I remember growing up in the church and hearing about abstinence, don't have sex, don't have sex. And I feel like a lot of times people have wrapped their identity in being abstinent.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm abstinent, I'm a good person. If I'm not abstinent, I'm a bad person. I'm dirty. So there's an issue with how the church presents it. And what I've come to realize is as much as we mean good and trying to encourage women to do things in a godly way, we're missing a lot of parts because it's like we're saying, okay, don't have sex before marriage. Okay. But then we also don't talk about sex in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so at my church, I'm super blessed and grateful that we talk about sex.
Yeah,
We
sexual
talk
integrity.
about like all the things. So if God created sex and he created it for a purpose, why are we not learning about that at church? Like a lot of times you're learning about these things outside of church, the school's teaching you, your playground friends, teenagers, and they're not the best place. And so when you create a safe place, just like how you create a safe place for single moms, but when you create a safe place just in general, that when you come to church and, like for example, we had a group called Sexual Integrity. It was what was one of the groups that I was part of. And we talked about like sex, and we talked about God's purpose in it. And it wasn't a nasty thing. You know, a lot of times church makes it seem like don't have sex, and it's like nasty and it's bad and like all these things. But like, no, like God created it, and he created for husband and wife, and he created it to be good. I think the perspective of having that safe place, talking about sex in general, helps make it not so
Mysterious.
yes, because like
Yes, yes.
yes, because it's literally a beautiful thing created by God. And because I took that class at church, and like my church talks about that, it has helped me so much as a mom to be able to talk to my son at his age. I think a lot of times parents choose to like wait to talk to their kids until they're old enough. But the average age of like kids being experiencing, I think porn is like 7 or 9 years old. So I don't want my child to learn from the world. And unfortunately, he's already been exposed at a younger age, you know, when he was at his dad's house and stuff. But because of my safe place and knowing what sex looks like in God's eyes, I was able to share that with him without shame, without judgment, so that he has a clear and healthy understanding from God's perspective. So that as he grows up, he understands, like he'll tell you, we call like sharing our body. And so like he sees that it's out of respect that we don't share our body with everybody. He doesn't look at it as don't have sex and that's just the end of it. Like we just don't have sex. No, there's a reason why, and understanding your worth and your value and understanding what sex was designed for, and it's not bad and it's not nasty. Like the way I even describe his like body parts and stuff like that. I'm like, God made that. It's beautiful. Like, and really making it not some weird, icky thing when that's not how God designed it. And I just feel like the church plays a role in that.
In the house I grew up in, I heard nothing about sex, and I learned it
Mhm.
all on the streets.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I think my dad would have chewed off his right leg before he would have told us five boys about the birds and the bees, as we called it.
Mhm.
And I was quite involved in a youth group at church. And if they would have helped us try to marshal these raging hormones,
Yes.
and not knowing why they're there and how do we manage them, you know, that would go a long way. But it's important to talk about it. My four sons got a conversation, you know, and it was out of my comfort zone. But once you got into it, then you realized how important it was. So, well, thank you both, Shanice and Amy, for joining us today. It's been an inspiring program for our listeners.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes. It's such an honor.
You know, Brad, today's conversation has been such an encouragement to me. And specifically, I think Shanice's story really stood out to me because of the love that she experienced, finding out that there are those resources, the pregnancy center that showed her the love of Christ. It speaks volumes.
Oh, and just look at where she was, living a promiscuous lifestyle where she didn't even know who the father of the baby was. And now to the woman she has become, because in large part to the small acts of kindness in her church, helping direct her in a godly way. And now she is a truly godly woman who is giving sterling advice to other women.
That's right. And both of our guests, really, if you look at their stories, you'll see that they grew up in the church before their unexpected pregnancy. I think that it shows the importance of these pastors speaking out on abortion, but also speaking out lovingly in defense of life and letting these women, not just in their immediate church, but in their entire community, know that if they face this struggle, they're not alone. They can come to the church, they'll find these resources, and they'll find that love. It can save so many lives.
And Embrace Grace is a lifeline to these women, and not just through the pregnancy, but through birth and beyond. And if churches and pastors in particular understood the opportunity for ministry, they would make starting an Embrace Grace a priority in their church.
That's right. And I want to encourage you, our listener, to visit our website, lifeissues.org. There you'll find out more information about Embrace Grace. You'll also find resources for your church so that those can be shared with your community members, your church family, so that women know that they are not alone. While you're on our website, lifeissues.org, I want to encourage you to join the Life Defenders today. You can be a daily part of our work together to save babies and promote a culture of life across America. Giving monthly, no matter the amount, is a tremendous commitment to the pro-life movement and our efforts to save babies. It helps us reach a persuadable audience with a pro-life message, and of course, it enables the very creation of this show. So help us do more for the babies by becoming a Life Defender today. Again, you can easily sign up while you're on our website, lifeissues.org. And be sure to tune in next week for another Straight Talk on Life Issues.